Hello everyone. Today I will be discussing why zoos should be banned. While some people see zoos as places for education and conservation, the evidence shows that they harm animals and often limited benefits. I will also suggest alternatives that better protect wildlife. Zoos may seem harmless or even beneficial at first glance, but the truth is animals in captivity often suffer, the conservation impact is limited, and better options exist. This speech will explore all of these points. Here is what we were going to be covering today. First, I will show how animals suffer in captivity. Then I will discuss the limited conservation benefits of zoos. Next, I will show alternatives that work better. We will also look at opposing arguments. And finally, I will conclude with why zoos should be phased out. To begin, let's look at how animals suffer in captivity. Damien Aspinall, a wildlife conservationist, says that zoos and wildlife parks are no way to treat an animal. Patty Clayton, a researcher in animal welfare, explains that many animals in zoos are kept in conditions that do not meet their behavioral and psychological needs. Lucinda Schmidt, a journalist, writes, "My main concern rests on giving animals the best quality of life. They're putting commercialism first, not welfare." Ben Haywood, an Australian journalist, notes that an animal in a zoo is an animal out of its natural world, despite the best of intentions in trying to recreate the creature's environment. These quotes show that even in a well-run zoo, animals cannot live naturally. Their mental and physical health is compromised, and commercial interests often take priority over welfare. These photos highlight the differences between captivity and natural habitats. Robert Young, a professor of wildlife conservation, shows a typical zoo enclosure with restricted space, while Madison Coleman, a wildlife journalist, captures animal suffering in captivity. Both demonstrate why zoos cannot replicate the wild. Now let's look at conservation argument. Damien Aspinall states, "The continuing presence of animals in captivity is a sign of mankind's failure." Albrecht Scoot Hassadeh and colleagues write that zoos have the capacity to do more for conservation science. Patty Clayton points out, "The role of zoos in actual species survival is limited." While zoos can contribute to research, their impact on species survival is minimal, and protecting natural habitats is far more effective at preventing extinctions. There are humane alternatives to traditional zoos. Damien Aspinall recommends the ultimate aim should be to render zoos and wildlife parks obsolete. Albrecht Scoot Hassadeh and colleagues explain, "Bringing zoos and universities together takes time, energy, and money. But the benefits for conservation are far-reaching." Ben Haywood writes, If we aim to preserve them and prevent extinction of certain species, then they should be looked after in wildlife sanctuaries or reservoirs where they have a semblance of their wild habitat and freedom. Opposing side. Zoos help children learn. Some people argue that zoos educate the public. Hugh Wyeth, a zoo advocate, says zoos support conservation, education, and research. Albrecht Scoot Hassadeh and colleagues note, some people view zoos as educational organizations dedicated to wildlife conservation. Others see them as places where exotic animals living in poor conditions are put on display. Damien Aspinall adds, today the idea that zoos provide the sole or even the best repository of learning is risible. Even if education is a goal, The learning is limited because captive animals cannot show their natural behaviors. Patty Clayton explains, zoos often present animals in ways that do not reflect their natural behavior. She also notes that true conservation should focus on species survival, not display. Education alone cannot justify keeping animals in captivity. The focus should be on actual species survival. Opposing side, animals survive better in zoos. Some claim that zoos can protect endangered species. Michael H. Robinson, a conservation scientist, writes, zoos worldwide could probably maintain viable populations of all the 2,000 species of land vertebrates that are now thought to be seriously endangered. Robinson also warns the mass extinctions cannot be stopped by ex-zoo breeding programs in zoos and elsewhere. At most, zoos can save only a tiny fraction of threatened species of animals. He continues, the only way that mass extinctions can be stopped is by saving habitats. Even successful breeding programs save only a small fraction of threatened species. Protecting natural habitats is only long-term solution. In conclusion, zoos harm animals, have limited conservation impact, and prioritize commercial interests over welfare. Humane alternatives like sanctuaries and wildlife reservoirs protect both the animals and their species. We must rethink our approach to conservation and phase out traditional zoos. Thank you for listening, and these are my sources.